I am continuing my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am reading in a chronological order of events, not according to publication or volume, so I will be skipping around a bit as I move along. I just wanted to make a few comments here. First of all, let us go back to chapter 2 of 2 Kings, when Elisha curses what is called little children in the King James, and two she-bears, two female bears come and kill something like 42 of them, or 20, well, I think it was 24 of them, kills 24 of them. And it's an odd story, but just a couple of things. I have been reading up on it a little bit, and I don't have all the information right in front of me right now because a lot of it's just scattered on the internet. But of course, the term little children actually should be more appropriately translated young men, probably in their late teens, early 20s. And they weren't just kind of yelling out simple, they says, go up, you bald head, kind of just a teasing, but it was more direct harassment. These guys weren't just teasing him from a distance. They were probably surrounding him like a mob, pushing him around, just being a general nuisance. It is also likely that they were not, why was such a large group of young men there? And from what I've read, it seems very likely that what they were doing was going out in the woods and killing the bear cubs, the whelps. Wasn't an unknown practice, wasn't an uncommon practice for young men, kind of the good sportsmen going out there and proving their valor and everything by killing the young bears. Having done so, the mothers of these bears would have become enraged, seeking vengeance for the death of their children. And so Elisha, when these men, they've been out very violently killing the animals, they come and they're harassing Elisha and just being a general nuisance. We don't know, it doesn't state that they physically attacked him, but they were not well behaved. And so Elisha calls down this curse, and the mother bears find them and get their revenge. Now, with this idea in mind, the story does make a lot more sense. I will say, in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, and even somewhat in the Book of Mormon, quite honestly, we get a few stories that were told the specifics of exactly what happened at this moment. But we're not given any explanation of what led to that moment. It's not an uncommon thing in scriptures. Because the point of the story for the Bible, for the author of 2 Kings, he's not there to tell the story of the young men, he's telling the story of Elisha. And so only that portion of events that directly deals with Elisha is included in the telling. Nothing else really matters to the point of this. The point was that God protects his prophets, and that Elisha had the power through his priesthood to call down this curse on these young men. Now, the point is not to justify Elisha. That's not what the Bible is trying to do. We assume that Elisha is justified because he is a prophet, and God would not call him to be a prophet, especially not in the high position that Elisha is the head of all the prophets. He's the president of the church. God doesn't call men to this position unless he trusts that they're not going to misuse the power he gives them. And so we assume that Elisha is justified. And then we have to try and figure out why he's justified. Because the author just tells the story. He says, this is what happened. He's not there to justify. He feels no need to justify Elisha. The author is not there to justify Elisha. He's just there to tell us, to show us Elisha's power and his priesthood authority. But that means it is not our part to condemn Elisha either. We don't look at this story and say, oh, how could Elisha do something so wicked, so mean, and so cruel? No, it's something has to be going on here to justify. We don't have enough information. We are not told exactly what's going on, but something had to have been going on for Elisha to be justified in doing this. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done it. And so the best explanation that I've been able to find is this idea that these young men were out killing the young bear cubs, and the mother bears were on the rampage in furious vengeance for the death of their children. And Elisha used his authority not to cause anything new to happen necessarily, but to more of either as a prophecy to say, look, you are going to be killed, or to use his authority to, in a sense, guide the bears to the men. That maybe if these young men hadn't harassed Elisha, they might have still escaped. But because they were harassing Elisha, Elisha used his authority to guide the events so that the mother bears could get the vengeance they sought. I did want to make that comment. The one other comment I want to make is I did make an error in my analysis in chapter 7 of 2 Kings. Because we have this whole thing, a couple of things I made an error on. So during most of this time, from like chapter 5 to chapter 8, Elisha performs various works. And it talks about the king of Israel, but never names him. And I said I thought this king was Joram, because this would have been the time period of Joram. And then we read in the end of chapter 8, we read in chapter 7 how the king is trod down by the mob and killed. But later on in chapter 8, we read how he is wounded by the Syrians much later on. And so I said the king in these earlier chapters couldn't be Jehoram because Jehoram doesn't die by being trodden on by the mob. But I made an error. And I want to point this out. I made an error here. And that is that it wasn't the king that was trodden on by the mob. I misread that. Because it says here, right here, in chapter 7, verse 2. Well, verse 1, Elisha declares great prosperity. There's going to be great prosperity because God's going to get rid of the army of Syria. And then it says here, then a Lord on whose hand the king leaned answered the man of God and said, behold, if the Lord would make windows in heaven, might this be? And he said, behold, thou shalt see it with thine eyes, but shalt not eat thereof. So it's not the king that made this comment. It is a Lord. So the king is weak, and he leans upon the Lord. Or even that phrase there, the king leaned, on whose hand the king leaned. That could just be a close counselor, close advisor of the king. And this guy, not the king, but this Lord, makes this comment. And the prophecy is pronounced against the Lord, not against the king. And later on, again, at the end of the chapter, it says, and that Lord answered the man of God. So, and the king appointed the Lord on whose hand he leaned to have charge of the gate. And the people trode upon him in the gate, and he died, as the man of God had said. So again, my error. This is during the reign of Joram. All of this, Elisha's time, this is when Joram was king in Israel. But the man who is trodden down and killed at the gate is not the king. He's just a lord. He's one of the nobility. So I wanted to point that out, that I did make that error. And I wanted to correct myself. Anyways, we're going to leave this video here. I want to make those two comments about Elisha and the young men and the king and the Lord being trodden down. Anyways, before I go, I will mention it. Like, subscribe, comment, ring the notification bells, share, all those good things that help us out here. We are over 400 subscribers now, which is very nice. The goal is still 500 by October. I still want to keep it at that schedule because I don't want to get ahead of myself. But we're doing good. We're doing good. We're over 400 now. I do appreciate it. And I do want to say that there's been a lot of people commenting on these videos. Not exactly the readings, but on some of the other videos, been getting some good participation. I do thank you for that. Anyways, we will see you in the next reading.